the M1 Carbine. The M1 Carbine was never meant to be a frontline rifle. The Army designed it in 1941 as a light backup for radio operators, drivers, and officers. Men who needed more than a pistol but less than the 9-pound Garand. More than 6 million were built. It became the most produced American small arm of the Second World War. Then Korea moved it to the front line, and the complaints started at the Chosin Reservoir in November 1950. In cold that hit 30 below, the oil inside the carbines turned to sludge. The magazine springs lost their tension, and the guns failed to feed. Soldiers said the little 30 caliber round would not put men down. That Chinese troops took hits and kept coming. Part of that was true and part was myth. An Army study after the war found the round's power was unchanged by the cold. The real problem was frozen lubricant and a weapon asked to do a rifle's job. The Army had built a close defense carbine, then it handed that carbine to men fighting for their lives at 200 yards. It sits at the bottom because right when it mattered most, it was the least deadly thing on this list, the Xiao Chat. The Xiao Chat was the automatic rifle American troops were handed because America showed up to the First World War with nothing like it. France had the only light machine gun one man could carry and fire on the move, so the doughboys took it, first in the French 8mm version, then in a version rebuilt for the American 30-06 cartridge. The rebuilt gun was worse. Its chamber was cut to the wrong size, so fire cases stuck and tore. American inspectors rejected as many as 4 out of every 10 that came off the line. The magazine had open slots cut in the side so a gunner could count his rounds. In a muddy trench, that meant dirt poured straight into the action. In the field, it jammed after about 100 rounds. And held wrong, its recoil slammed back into the shooter's face. French crews called that the slap. Its reputation as the worst gun ever made is a little unfair. The 8mm version worked well enough, but the American 30 caliber Chow Chat earned every insult it got. It was so unreliable, it was barely deadly to anyone. And now and then, it was deadly to its own gunner. The Trapdoor Springfield. Model of 1873. The Springfield model of 1873 was a single-shot rifle. In an age when repeating rifles already existed. The Army knew that. It chose the single shot on purpose because officers believed troops with repeaters would waste ammunition. Cost and supply won the argument. Firepower lost it. The bill came due on June 25, 1876 at the Little Bighorn. Custer's cavalry carried the carbine version, loaded with copper cartridges. When the breech got hot, the soft copper cases swelled. The extractor ripped straight through the rim and left the empty shell stuck fast. The carbine had no cleaning rod to push it out, so troopers pried the cases loose with knife blades under fire. One survivor from Reno's column described clearing a jam, passing the rifle up the line, then clearing the next. How much this decided the battle is still argued. A 1983 dig at the site found only about 3 in 100 recovered cases showed signs of being forced out. The jams were real, but they did not lose the fight alone. The deeper failure was older and simpler. The Army sent men against warriors carrying Winchester and Henry repeaters and armed them with a rifle that fired once and then stopped. The Krag-Jørgensen. The Krag-Jørgensen, adopted in 1892, was the first American rifle built for smokeless powder, and by peacetime standards, it was a fine weapon. It loaded through a small hinged gate on the side of the receiver, 1 round at a time. That worked on a quiet firing range. It did not work at San Juan Hill. On July 1, 1898, American troops climbed the heights outside Santiago into fire from Spanish regulars carrying Mauser Medial of 1893 rifles. The Mauser fed from a stripper clip. 5 rounds pressed into the magazine in one motion. The Krag took them one by one through the gate. And the Spanish round was faster and shot flatter too. A few hundred defenders held up thousands of Americans and inflicted roughly 1,400 casualties that day on the San Juan Heights. The lesson was blunt and the Army took it. Within 5 years, it replaced the Krag with the Springfield 1903. A rifle copied so closely from the Mauser that the United States ended up paying Germany for the patents. The Krag was not a bad rifle. It was brought to a gunfight against a better one, and American soldiers paid the difference. The low-number Springfield 1903. The Springfield 1903 was one of the best bolt-action rifles the Army ever issued. That is what makes this entry strange. For a stretch of his production, the 1903 was most dangerous not to the enemy, but to the man firing it. The receiver is the steel frame that contains the pressure of the shot. Back then, it was hardened by heat, and workers judged the temperature by the color of the glowing metal. By eye. On an overcast day, the color looked right. On a bright, sunny day, that same color meant the steel was as much as 300 degrees too hot, which left it brittle. Nobody could tell a good receiver from a bad one by looking. In the last 6 months of 1917 alone, 11 of these rifles shattered when fired. 1 man was badly hurt, 10 more slightly. General Julian Hatcher traced the cause, and the Army moved to a double heat treatment. The fix worked, but it drew a hard line through the serial numbers. Below roughly 800,000 at Springfield and below 285,507 at Rock Island, the rifles are still called low number and still treated as unsafe to fire. A century later, a superb weapon, undone for a while by a sunny afternoon at the first, the M14. The M14 was a genuinely deadly rifle the Army fielded at the wrong moment, and partly by cheating to do it. Adopted in 1957, it fired the full-power 7.62 NATO round and was meant to replace 4 weapons at once: the Garand, the carbine, the submachine gun, and the automatic rifle. On paper, one rifle to do everything. In practice, it could not. Its round hit so hard that on full automatic, the barrel climbed off target after a few shots. Soldiers joked it turned into an anti-aircraft gun when the lighter AR-15 was tested against it. The Army ran the trial so unfairly that the Inspector General later confirmed the testers were biased toward the M14. Early production was rough too, with heat treatment faults that cracked receivers. Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara had seen enough. In 1964, he halted M14 production and ordered the switch to the rifle that became the M16. The M14 had served as the standard rifle for about 7 years, one of the shortest runs in American history. It hit hard when it hit, but the Army had forced through a heavy battle rifle for a war that would be fought up close in the jungle, and it was almost obsolete the day it arrived. The M16. Then there is the rifle that ties the whole list together, because it was deadly to both sides at once. The M16 was forced into Vietnam over the objections of the Army's own Ordnance Corps, and the rollout was a disaster that got Americans killed. The rifle a Eugene Stoner design was reliable. What reached the troops was not. The Army switched the gunpowder in the cartridge to a cheaper type that burned dirtier and made the rifle cycle too fast. It skipped the chrome lining that keeps the chamber from rusting, and it told soldiers the M16 was so clean it barely needed care. So many were issued with no cleaning kits at all. In the heat and wet of Vietnam, chambers corroded, fired cases welded in place, and the extractor tore through the brass. Men were found dead beside jammed rifles, cleaning rods in their hands, killed while trying to punch a stuck case out of the barrel. By 1967, the reports were bad enough that Congress opened the ICORD subcommittee. Its report said the Army's failure to fix known problems borders on criminal negligence. The fixes were simple: change the powder back, chrome the chamber, issue cleaning kits and training. Once that was done, the same rifle became one of the most effective service weapons ever built, and it has armed American soldiers for more than 50 years. That is the whole paradox of this list, in one gun. The M16 sits at the top as the most deadly rifle the Army was forced to issue. Deadly first to its own soldiers, and then, once someone finally listened, to everyone else. Look back at the 7, and the pattern is hard to miss. Almost none of these rifles failed because no better option existed. The repeaters were there in 1876. The Mauser was there in 1898. The AR-15 was there before the M14. Each time something other than the soldier's life won the decision. The cost of ammunition, the pride of the Ordnance Department, a contract, a rigged trial, a rush to the front. And if you watch up until this point, please consider subscribing.